You're listening to Haggy Shack Radio on HaggyShack.com with Barbara Three Crow in Beyond Reality. And you're live.
Thank you, Colleen. Hi, everybody. This is me, Barbara Three Crow, live with Beyond Reality. It's March 17th. I'm going to start today with a little bit of a different read for you, and then I will get to the stories, the teachings of Don Juan, the Shaman's Way. But this is titled In Two Worlds, Waking Up to Another Layer of Reality by Carissa Conti. Paranormal and anomalous happenings, reality glitches, number sightings, ear tones, deja vu, synchronicities, parallel timelines and timeline manipulation, military/alien abductions, and mind-control dimensional bleed-throughs, and more. So this has got a lot of stuff in it. I'm going to see where I go with this. And we're starting out with number sightings. And this is kind of new to me, maybe. I don't know, maybe it's new to you. But in a way, I've had some of this stuff happening to me. And she's talking about the patterns of numbers that we experience or that keep popping up for us, and what all that might mean. So are there certain numbers that you consider to be your numbers? Like, do you find that when you glance at the clock, it always seems to be at a certain time? Take it a step further, and have you even gotten the same particular numbers that appear on various things that you come into contact with? If so, that would be what I call number sightings, for lack of a better term. It's a very real phenomenon, though, and one that goes above mere chance and statistical probability, as I will show. Now, for myself, I've had, like last month, I woke up several times in the night, which I wake up every night, at least once to go to the bathroom, to go pee, and especially if I'm drinking a lot of water. And I look at the clock, and it's 3:33. And the first night I woke up, I happened to look at the clock. I don't always look at the clock, but I was sort of compelled, for some reason, again, to look at the clock, and it was 3:33. And I think it was maybe the following night or maybe 2 nights later, I woke up again, and I lie there, and I thought, I don't want to get up. You know that feeling, right? I got my blankies on, and I'm tired, so I don't want to get up. Then I start getting this message, look at the clock, look at the clock. Well, I looked at the clock reluctantly because now I'm bothering myself. Got to turn over, got to look at the clock, and it was 3:33. And I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. So numbers and symbolisms are a universal language. These actually are to communicate to anybody, no matter what their culture or what language they speak. And in our modern technology, their based society, numbers are, of course, everywhere. Now, with the digital age, we have an increase in the ways in which numbers can appear to us. Digital numbers are on your cell phone, they're on your alarm clock, your computer, your car dashboard clock, the DVD player, television and stereo, iPod, video game systems, numbers everywhere, and plenty of opportunity for the universe to get through to you and communicate. So I find it interesting that the New Age idea of evolving to a higher realm and spiraling out of consciousness with numbers such as 1111, supposedly acting as a signpost of this, happened to come about in this modern technology advanced society, where digital numbers make these signposts possible. With so much digital numbering going on around us, probability would have it that number sightings would naturally be on the increase. The more techno gadgets we own and come into contact with, the more opportunities there are for these number sightings. So are the increase in number sightings a natural result of the digital age, or is something higher taking advantage of the digital age to communicate with us? Can consciousness also take advantage of the technology to synchronistically draw to itself various sorts of phenomenon, including numbers? I think it can be any one of those theories. A good place to start for anybody who's researching the subject is to learn a little about numerology, the meaning of numbers. Numbers have symbolic meanings as well as a vibrational frequency. And once you understand the basics of what numbers mean, you can begin applying those meanings to the numbers that consistently come to you. It's a starting point, and without the foundation of what a number means, you might have a hard time getting to the bottom of why particular numbers, sequences keep appearing to you. The more you learn the language, the more you will notice, and the more symbolism will come your way. By the way, you're going to need a paper and pencil in a few seconds. I'm just giving you a heads up. So here's a rundown of common number meanings to get you started if you're unfamiliar with any of this. And just to note that I didn't come up with these meanings, the author says. At the end of this piece, I cite several sources of research to the reader, if the reader is interested, but I realized I should make note of that after seeing the following copied and pasted and passive. I came up
to remind
with this,
each one of you
I did not.
Why you
That's the author. So, I hope you got your pencil and your paper. So, here's the number 0. Timelessness, super consciousness, and God. Number 1. Beginnings, origins, conception, individuality, and the ego. Number 2, union, partnership, two halves of a whole, coming together, duality, male, female, yin, yang, good, and evil. And number 3, life, inner strength, creativity, planning, developing, constructing, striving, the divine trinity, past, present, and future, mother, father, and child. And number 4, stability, work, labor, structure, foundation, earthly things, like the cube, the square, and being satiated. In other words, being full or filled, satiated. Number 5 is action, changing of the course, or change of course, or change of direction, daring and bold nature. The 5 human senses, material excess, man and primal urges, and in occultism, for instance, think of the pentagram. Number 6, harmony, tranquility, balance, love, perfection. Things are flowing and being in the flow. Number 7, high spiritual achievement, mental perfection. Other sources define 7 as the waiting period also, like being stuck in limbo, unable to move forward, and a time of evaluation, or I'm going to say maybe reflection. Evaluation, the unstable period before inevitable change. So that's like sort of being in limbo. And it's true when we're in limbo, you kind of feel unstable, or out of sorts, or what the heck is going on, you kind of think. So you could say, think of Genesis, and on the seventh day God rested. And I always say, and when people say to me, I feel like nothing's happening in my life, or I feel like I'm in limbo. And I kind of say, well, Creator's at work. No matter whether you see something unfolding or feel things are moving, Creator is at work. So just have patience. And now number 8, power, authority, will, material gains, success, energy, karma, entering a new phase. It's the sign for infinity. Okay. It's a figure 8 tipped on its side. That is the sign of infinity, the number 8. Yes, I will pop this into the chat when I'm done. Number 9, endings, rebirth, reformation, recovery, things coming full circle, and the circle is 360 degrees. For instance, if you take 3 plus 6, 3 plus 6 plus 0 equals 9. 10 is the closure of a cycle. Closure of a cycle, transformation, beginning anew, possibly on a higher level. Also, computer binary code, indicative of a program, in quotes, is the repeating 10, 10, 10, 10. Number 11 is the initiate, mastery of a domain, spirituality, enlightenment, potential to achieve, and many, many people have reported consistently spotting a variation of this, which is 1111, namely on clocks. Now, 2 interesting theories include 1111 being a trigger code to wake us up and raise ourselves out of the illusion, or being in the flow and on the right track with things lining up, as evidenced by the parallel line structure of 1111. In trying to figure out how people came to decide that 1111 is a trigger code of some sort, I did come across a definition of the number 11 in Mary Summer Rain's Guide to Dream Symbols book. Okay, Mary Summer Rain, her Guide to Dreamer Symbols, or Dream Symbols. You can look that up. She claims that 11 represents misplaced values. Now, I thought that was interesting, since she's pretty much the only source saying this. If 11 represents misplaced values, then getting 11 could be a reminder to rethink our values and to strive for something better. And number 12, spiritual strength, divine protection. It's a related form of 3, since when it is broken down, 1 plus 2 equals 3. And I did look up 333, by the way, the number 3. And in that information, it said that it's about the being guided or watched over or protected by angels. Well, I thought that was a good thing. And, that's a nice message. I wake up in the middle of the night and there's 333 more than one time, and that's a message. Oh, yeah, I'm being protected and watched over by the angels. And 13 is obstacles to overcome, death, destruction, an end, and a beginning. 28 is the moon cycle. It's the feminine cycle. So 28 is 2 plus 8, which is 10. So think of the meaning of the number 10 and how it matches with the concept of the moon and the feminine cycles. 33 is high potential, mastery of spiritual consciousness. The 33rd rite of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry is the highest level one can achieve. Gee, was that the message I was getting? I don't know. And Jesus died at 33, but then again, the Bible was supposedly rewritten by Freemasons who inserted that in. Well, how do we know? People keep messing with everything, right? So for me, the main numbers that have followed me around for the longest time have been 119, 948, and 141. Now 119 for my birthday, 11/9, at 948 for the time I was born. And 141, well, it wasn't originally my number, but it transferred over to me. But more on that in a moment. In 2003, as my awareness grew, the number sightings branched out to include repeating numbers such as 111, 222, 333, 444, 555, and 1111, and so forth. So sequence numbers such as 123, 234, and 123.4, and even more unusual yet meaningful numbers such as 1133, and 1010, and 1212. So, about the whole 141 transfer thing, 141 had been my brother's personal number, something that supposedly followed him around. Now with Joe, it was always 141 this and 141 that. Although I have never saw any proof of this, I just took his word for it that this was happening. I myself didn't have numbers that followed me around like that. However, once I moved up to Portland, Oregon in November 2001, that started to change. Now, not too long after arriving in Portland, where I was roommates with my brother, who was a mind-controlled MyLab pawn abductee, and he's got a book about that, Chasing Phantoms, and to find out more about that. He began to notice that he was seeing 1109 an awful lot on the clocks. 1109. I'd get the urge to glance at my digital alarm clock at home or at the computer clock at work right when it was 1109. And see, he said, I get the urge. So see, something is telling us, look at the clock. So my birthday is 11/9, so the number meant something to me. Coincidentally, before starting to see these numbers in Portland, I'd recently begun assigning the numbers 119 and 948 to myself, usually within passwords and stuff. So I'd consciously reached out to those numbers. Pay attention to what he's saying. He consciously reached out to those numbers, which plays a big part in how the phenomenon can happen. I think. He says, I think. This is a point I'll return to again at the end of this piece when I discuss the important role that awareness seems to play in drawing number sightings to ourselves. Now, it was during this time period in 2001 that I discovered that my dad's phone extension at work back in Connecticut is now 141. My first thought when I heard the voicemail recording it at his company announcing his name and 141 attached to it was to think, oh great, now they got to you too. When I told my brother about it, he just stared at me, deadpan. It was so incredible, he made me redial the number just so he could hear for himself. Then the night Joe was arrested in Portland, caught breaking into a building with stolen items on him from a previous burglary, everything changed. That just came out of left field, by the way. What a drama that was. It's a long story, which I won't get into here, but that was the night that 141 transferred over to me. Now, 5 minutes before the cops showed up with my brother in the back of their car, I got another 1109 on the clock. It literally made me stop in my tracks, frozen in place for a few seconds, realizing, okay, this isn't right. Something is happening. Then the doorbell rang, and how right I was. Almost an hour and a half later, when they were asking me to sign a warrant for them to search my belongings since I roomed with him and I was considered equally as guilty until proven innocent, I had to put the date and the time on the paperwork. I glanced at the clock, which said 12:21. A mirror number, the same backwards and forwards. Not only that, but my full given name adds up to 84 in numerology, and 8 plus 4 equals 12. And Joe's adds up to 21. Without having to break it down, it's pretty clever, isn't it? Both 12 and 21 also equal 3. So when you add 1 plus 2, so together we're both 33, and 12 plus 21 equals 33. But wait, there's more. 1221 also happens to break down to 12 plus 21 equals 141. So when the cops were finally leaving, I glanced at the clock for only the third time that evening, and it was 1:41 a.m. exactly. The cops were leaving at 1:41 with my brother in tow, but the fun had only just begun. 141 and the other two numbers came up repeatedly throughout the course of that insane weekend. Every time I had the urge to glance at the clock that weekend, it was 10:41, 11:41, 1:41, 11:09, 9:48, or some combination such as 4:11, 10:14, 11:14, 1:14, and so on. Even when I had the urge to look at my mileage odometer, I was sitting in my car in the Rite Aid parking lot, intensely contemplating whether to bail my brother out of jail yet again, and then I had the urge, there's that urge, to glance at the odometer, something I rarely pay attention to, and it just so happened to be at exactly 119,974, and my birthday is 11/9/1974. Wow, this is really freaky. Woo, 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 woo. Okay, close enough for horseshoes. It was absolutely out of control. And at that time, I had the feeling that there was a tug of war going on between 119 and 141. Now, 119, my number, me, and 141, my brother's number, him, who was dragging me down in life and who I was trying to make a break from. Now, 141 has been a regular part of my life ever since that weekend. I would also come to discover that 141 is embedded within my brother's birthday. His birthday was 1/31/1981. So breaking that down, numerology style, this reduces numbers down to a single digit. What we get is 1. 3 plus 1 equals 4. 1 plus 9 plus 8 plus 1 equals 19 equals 10 equals 1. Pretty clever, if I do say so myself. He's questioning here, is this hyperdimensional fingerprints? So with that in mind, let's review some of the more intriguing highlights of my number sightings taken from my personal logbook so you can see just what I'm talking about. My logbooks are filled with many an entry that simply states that I had the urge to glance at the clock right when it was a certain time, whether it be 11:09, 1:41, or some form of those numbers. Well, that's definitely important, and it's the exact type of situation you could document if you were set about to log your own number sightings. I won't bore you to tears by listening to all of those entries. It gets repetitive, actually, and you get the point. So instead, I will focus on the more intriguing and bizarre examples taken from my book with some minor edits for clarity. Bonus, I'm always talking about, okay, so what does it mean? Now, after all that, some may be wondering what the bigger picture is regarding this phenomenon. What in the frickety-frack does it mean? And how does it all happen, anyway? Now, for starters, much of this phenomenon seems to be beyond time. The way in which things to come my way or align on key number moments clearly indicates something operating outside of the constraints of linear time. So that's the first important thing to note. After 6 years of getting these numbers, I've noticed that I've never received 141 in a way that was positive. 141 compared to 119 is always loud and in my face, appearing in creepy, surreal ways that defy statistical chance. When something negative is coming up, I have a warning in the form of a big old 141 or multiple 141s, which seem to pop up everywhere. Now, a psychic acquaintance who listened to my story said that 141 could also be a sign of being off track in life, not listening to your intuition, making bad choices, not keeping oneself spiritually up to par and going against the flow. I like that theory and believe both have validity, depending on the situation, though. Now, on the flip side, the 119s tend to be quiet. They're sort of hovering in the background, making their presence quietly heard before ducking aside again. It is usually intricately connected to the 141, but far more unobtrusive. Now, what I've noticed is that sometimes I get a 119 and 1109 first, followed by the 141, and sometimes another 119 and 1109 afterward. Somebody recently mentioned to me in an email that they view 119s as being 9/11 in reverse. So basically, disaster, emergency averted. When I heard that, I was like, oh, of course, definitely one possibility. 119, 1109 may also refer to something neutral or positive, like learning lesson, if you will, also generated by my own higher self. Now, maybe when it's attached to the negative 141, it might indicate that the negative experience is a learning lesson. Who knows? Although, at this point, I'm really liking the 9/11 in reverse disaster averted theory. 948, in turn, occurs very rarely. But when it does, it's usually always linked with a time when I am going through positive changes like a growth or rebirth. So I was born at 948, so it makes sense, a new beginning. Now, these are just theories, but that's what all the evidence is pointing to for me. I started out with no theory at all and have worked my way up to this. If evidence comes in which can further prove or disprove it, I'm always open to it. But getting back onto the subject of time. As noted in my Synchronicities write-up, I've recently realized something that others have noted as well, that time seems to be flowing backwards. These negative 141 events have already happened, and the effects of them are spilling backwards in the timeline. Now, to read more about this, see the Syncs write-up, and I don't know where that is, but maybe we can find it. So, he's saying that time, and others have noted this, that time seems to be flowing backwards. Now, in these instances, the 141s can be a useful heads-up, alerting me to something coming up, so I can be more aware of my own thoughts and actions, reactions, and thus sidestep something. And in case you're wondering whether the negative meddling, trouble, negative events spilling backwards in the timeline is set in stone, totally unavoidable? Well, the answer to that is a resounding no. It's not set in stone. All it means is that there is potential for problems and mishaps, but the outcome depends on us and how we react, or don't react in some cases, to whatever happens. Ultimately, we're all in charge of our own actions and our reactions. So, here we go. Don Juan, who is a Toltec, by the way, calls this stalking yourself. And remember, I talk about that when I'm reading Don Juan. Okay, this means you closely watch, you analyze, and you modify your thoughts, your words, and your actions. It's a very good habit to get into and necessary for waking up. And it doesn't mean waking up from a sleep. It means awakening. However, in the repeated cases of having the urge to glance at the clock at key times, most of which I don't even mention in the above excerpts due to the redundant nature of it, it seems to be more spur of the moment, a taking advantage of an opportunity sort of thing, like getting a poke in the ribs to, okay, look now, okay, look. Somebody's like poking you. Although that something poking me in the ribs was definitely outside of time, I would imagine. And then there's the idea that sometimes these numbers may just be the universe's way of getting our attention, like a hand waving in front of your face. And once it gets your attention, causing you to look closer at the phenomenon, then maybe you'll start to look a little closer at other things going on in your reality and, start to wake up. Who knows? However, as useful as the numbers may be for forewarning or impending events, something that's always nagged at me is the viral nature of them. You know, the way in which they spread from person to person. 141 was never my number, but it became my number once I started hearing about it over and over. Then it became my boyfriend Tom's number after hearing about it from me. And now 141 has spread on to people who've since read about it on my site. Uh-oh. Okay, everybody out there, pay attention. If this 141 starts to connect with you, his theory will be right. We'll know for sure. But I don't know, maybe it's like this collective consciousness, the waves of energy and thought processes that we're all connected to, kind of makes sense to me, you know. So after hearing about 137 this and 137 that, wouldn't you know it, it spread to him starting in 2007. On the David Icke message board forum, there was a thread started by a poster named AAAA555 called Get Off the Signal, having to do with numbers, syncs, symbols, and so forth, and I found his ideas on the subject to be worth noting. I asked him if I could quote him on my site, but as it typically goes on the David Icke forum of chaos and mayhem, he never came back to post in his own thread that he even started. But since it was posted publicly on a forum in the first place, I'm going to quote what he said. Now here's the quote. If you are making associations with signs, with numbers, with symbols, or other forms, events, or things around you, you are running the risk of getting on the signals. The signals are not divine. They're just electromagnetic radiation pulses that can be perceived as information by you. You are your own person. You do not need signals to tell you what is right or wrong or what to do. You can act on your own accord. If you are on the signal, you are subject to the signal, and eventually you won't be you anymore. The signal will be you, and your body will be taken over by something not of this world, not human. This is the game played by them. You look at something that they manifest in the world, and energy courses through your body, binding you to that sign. Now you do this over and over again for years, and eventually You will be the signal. You will be them. Now, okay, that's might sound a little crazy to some, I'm sure, but I do understand what he's talking about, the author's saying. The longer these things happen, the more you notice and pay attention, the easier it is to become it. Now, it sounds to me like that guy who wrote that quote on David Icke's link must have had a really incredible experience, in my estimation. He got somehow hooked in, tangled into something. Now, I'm not saying that what he's describing here is true. Apparently, he has had himself some strange, disturbing experiences. And he apparently was focused on something, and it seemed to have taken him over. And I suppose you could say, yeah, that often happens. I don't know fully about, it's hard to say what type of experience he has. But I'm just reading this for you, and you determine what you think. So, an excerpt from part of my response in that thread. So here's the author responding to what that person wrote on David Icke's blog. I've had other people's numbers transfer over to me, and in turn my numbers have suddenly become other people's numbers. The common denominator was awareness. In a way, it becomes like a virus. What I've clearly seen for myself is that the more you pay attention, the more weird stuff starts to happen, or starts happening. On the one hand, my tendency has been to describe it as part of the awakening process. You know, you start to emerge from the trance-like slumber that this society's got everybody in, and the universe in turn responds. Now you've got signs and you've got road posts and such guiding you on your way. But on the other hand, there was no denying the slightly viral aspect of it all, and that's kind of always nagged at me. So for that reason, there's not a black and white, a polarized situation of either the numbers, signs, syncs, symbols are all bad, or it's all some positive, fluffy, new age, divine guidepost. I think it can be a mix of both. But let me be honest, I'd love it if the numbers would stop. It was novel for the first few years, and utterly amazing sometimes with the way some of these number sightings occurred, but I'm totally over it by this point. So here's some food for thought. I think we are helping to make this phenomenon possible, whether for the good or bad. I still haven't decided which one it is, although if I never had another number sighting again, I wouldn't miss it, that's for sure, despite how helpful it might be. And I suppose that's pretty telling. Now, yeah, I don't think this is a black and white situation. I think that, again, this has to be about our discernment. It seems to me like this is a collective conscious connection here. And, you know, we're also very vulnerable to being imprinted with thought and suggestions. I mean, for sure. And let's say somebody says, gee, I keep seeing this number, 141. It's everywhere I look. It's on my clock when I wake up. It's on my, my alarm, my watch, my this, my that. So you're telling someone and they hear these words you're saying, 141. Yeah, this 141 really is kind of around me a lot. 141, it keeps coming. It's been a couple of months now and so on and so forth. This 141. All right, so the person you're speaking to is receiving this information. Maybe there is something about numbers, because numbers have power. Numbers have a frequency, as everything does have a frequency, our words, but numbers specifically in this case might be, imprinting in other people's minds when you start talking about those particular numbers. I'm just saying, that's a possibility. Who is giving you these numbers? That's the other thing. And that, I think, it might be helpful to go a little further with your own discernment and your own connectedness to source. And just like when some people say, oh, I saw this angel, or I saw this being, or this light appear to me, I always say to them, well, did you say, are you from the light? Are you from divine source? Because that's our right to say that. We must do that, because all sort of things can appear, and they can appear in many forms. It does not necessarily mean that they are of the light, but the law of the universe says that once we ask that question, whatever it is, if it is not of the light, it will immediately disappear. So, in the case of this constant number thing, and it could go for anything, if it's puzzling to you or you feel confused or disturbed about it, you can go to source. And let's say we are in control here. You just don't accept everything and feel muddled and befuddled by it and say, I don't know what to do. We have our own power. We have our own tools and abilities. And if you go to source and you say, are these numbers divine? Are these numbers from source, divine source? And if not, stop it. Get out of my head. Get out of my life. Go away. I'm just saying. Now let's go to ear tones. Yeah, ear tones. These are intermittent, short-lived tones occurring in either ear, which many people seem to experience. Oftentimes they are preluded by a pronounced muting effect, where the sound in the room seems to abruptly shut out as the tone then fades in. Yeah. So it's a tone that fades in, goes on for a bit, and then fades back out. Is this familiar to any of you out there? But it's not to be confused with tinnitus. This is different. Tinnitus is a chronic condition of damaged eardrums where one's ears constantly ring or hum. Now, this was created by, it's amazing. All right, I guess she's saying click below for an audio media for a simulation of what a muting followed by an ear tone sounds like. So, to me, it's like your hearing just suddenly shuts down. It's almost like you've shifted into another level of silence. It's inside your ear canal. It's silence, but then this other tone comes in, and then it goes away, and then sort of like your ears open back up again. So ear tones can also leave residual after effects. For me, I've experienced a burning, fried feeling in my ears on several occasions when they've occurred, much like I've been chatting on a cell phone for several hours. Sometimes the tone itself causes physical discomfort in the ear, making me cringe. Now, related to this, I've experienced something akin to a tuning fork, where the sound was coming from just outside my ear and sounded identical to a tuning fork, and it felt like I was literally being gonged and caused some dizziness and disorientation for a few seconds. Other related aspects to ear ringings are ear clickings. They're called, or thwumpings, for lack of a better way to describe it, and muted pressure without a tone. Now, clickings are just that clicking noises that seem to come from deep within the ear. My boyfriend has experienced this, which is how I heard about it, and has proven for himself that it's not natural or some biological malfunction. Other times, these clickings occur when he's not consciously focused, yet they stop as soon as he focuses in on the sound. He also used to run a highly trafficked message board forum and noticed that he would get clickings on his ears or in his ears at the exact time that certain troublemakers were logged onto his forum, either causing problems or apparently just having negative thoughts toward him, which would later become evident in their various postings. Now, this theory was further supported when he began to notice that the clickings consistently occurred with the same people. He'd get clickings, then check the forum and see that yet again it was the same certain people logged on. So for him, clickings are associated with negative thoughts or energy being directed his way, whatever the source may be, human or otherwise. Now, thwumpings feels very similar to the effect I have having fingers flicked in front of your ears, according to those I know who have described it to me. The muted pressure is when the sound goes mute in either ear, and then accompanied by a pressure that usually feels quite uncomfortable, but no ringing and no tone. This actually seems to be one new mode of operation within my own ear tone adventures, interestingly enough. Now, since putting this write-up out there on the net, not only are some of my ear tones now much fainter and shorter than they are ever used to be, but there's also this new muted pressure thing as well. Now, they're talking to abductees here. Apparently she has been abducted because she's saying another abductee I know who experiences the tones has recently noticed this change in operations as well. And a new one that a reader just informed me about are ear tones that sounds like Morse code. Well, my gosh, I'm going to stop right here because I have to tell this story. Wow. Okay. I have always experienced periodically in my life a various high-pitched tone. It'll just comes in, it holds its high-pitched tone, and then boom, it's gone. Now, I've had this since I was a child. I don't have tinnitus. But I learned from Source that this was sort of like communication or download or signals, okay, from the beings. Something changed about, I'm going to say, let me see. I started this group because of my own ET experiences and other phenomenon throughout my whole life. I met these other two people who also had ET experiences, UFO experiences, abduction experiences, and other phenomena. And we decided, we would talk about how difficult it is to share these things with people, how people look at you, they kind of like back away or their eyebrows raise up, and you can tell, this person is not open to this. So, and you're also, described as a nutcase or weird or crazy. And we were talking about that, and I said, we should have a group where people who have had these experiences can come in a safe place, safe environment, where we can just share or witness their experiences and be supportive. Rather than them having to keep these secrets or feel like they're strange or weird or crazy or losing their mind. And we did. We formed an organization for people who have had phenomena, possibly abduction, or ET, UFO experiences, or other phenomena. It was not necessarily about being abducted or seeing a UFO. It was just about, if you've had unusual phenomena in your life, just come and sit with us and share it. We're all supportive. Now, I'm going to say that was about 8 years ago. Something started to happen then to me. I'll answer now. A clock's asked a question. Just give me a second. Something started to happen. The sounds in my ears changed. And I'm listening to this bizarre, it's almost like a conversation, but I said to the people, because we started going outside, we'd go outside, we'd set up our chairs, we'd go out and we'd focus on the skies, on the star nations, and we'd hold an energy, holding an energy of sort of like communication or welcoming, the star brothers and sisters, and to see, if we could focus in on any of the relatives up there, and if we would have any sightings. So when we started to do that, something started to happen to me. And she's talking about this new phenomenon of the ear tones that sound like Morse code. And that is how I described it to the group of people. I said, look, something's happening. I'm hearing in my ears like this Morse code. Are any of you guys hearing it? Nobody was, but I sure was. And it went on for years. And definitely a Morse code sound. This is the first time here, as I'm reading this for the first time, that anyone else has identified this exact phenomenon that I have been experiencing. So, and here's a quote from the email. These are very, very frequent for me, and in fact, I listen quietly enough. I can hear it running deep in the background most of the time. It is a series of 2 different notes, or positive, negative sounds. Tone, semitone, tone. In varying length of short and long, Morse code is the only thing that I can liken it to. And that's exactly what I determined. This is a Morse code. And so now, okay, let me see. Now a clock says, how did you learn from source? Please, what was the communication method? Okay. Well, all right. This is about energy. Again, do you know that a positive has a different energy different energy frequency than a positive and negative? Both have their own unique frequency, okay? If there really is this one God, source, creator, element, why would people speaking in its name be against one another? Sure. Well, yes, I agree with you. That is a big issue, isn't it? Yes. But you asked me a question, and I'm going to, give you the answer. What was the communication method, that source that I connect with, okay? I am not saying that I particularly connect with Great Spirit, God Creator, all right? It's the source that I have always been in communication with since childhood. I call them the grandmothers, the ancestors, or the beings, okay, the light beings. That's just for me. Other people have source in other ways that they do this. So, again, getting back to energy. Positive has a higher frequency. Okay. Negative has a lower frequency. So when you speak to the universe, and I will say source, when you speak to that source responds accordingly. Okay. So I'm seeking with my clear intention a response, okay, an answer to my question. That's all from intention. My intention is in place, okay, and I'm speaking to source, and I am open to receive the energy of a yes or a no or different information, whether it's a long sentence, whether it's a visual, and my job is to discern the truth through the frequency of what I am receiving. So if I receive an answer, my job is to discern if this is truth or not through the frequency of that response. Okay, so you have to develop your discernment tool and work with energy. You have to understand what different energies feel like. Like positive feels completely different, very different frequency energy than a negative, or let's say a lie. Wrong information will feel differently from truth or fact. And that's up to us to discern that. And it is about energy. So that's the only way that I can explain that to you. And I hope that that has helped. And so here's back to the Morse code. It kind of makes me feel, I guess, well, the question is, it's sort of like I know that it's a signal But here's the other thing. I learned a long time ago that when you receive a frequency, and it is particular sound frequency, stop what you're doing. Hold yourself still. Clear your mind and receive. Allow yourself to receive. Now, this again, I've already discerned that this is a positive frequency, that it's a positive downloading of message or guidance, okay? So therefore, in order to receive, I clear myself. I don't preoccupy myself or just keep going on with what I'm doing. You know, it's sort of like, okay, here's a signal coming in. Let me hold myself and let me receive, rather than preoccupying myself or just going on about my business and saying, what the heck is that noise in my ears, you know? So it's sort of like being tuned in to source, to guidance, to signals from higher beings or higher frequency, or your guides, okay? Just like, this Morse code is very unique. And like I said, it was going on for years. It's no longer with me, but I'm just really kind of like, this is really neat. That's other people have been having this Morse code experience. So it tells me, I want to say that prior to the Morse code, there was just a one tone or one level of frequency coming in. And now it has become more elaborate, more involved. Morse code is pretty elaborate and pretty evolved. So what does that mean? You know, other people are experiencing this. I experienced it. I think we are transitioning. I think we are reaching different conscious levels, higher levels we're supposed to be. And these tools are being given to us to utilize. And I think also a lot of this is about our psychic abilities, our communication psychically. A lot of us have this where we will all be on the same page. Sometimes like in the chat room, somebody will type something in and you are in the process of typing the exact same thing in, or the same perspective. Or as we often say, we're in the flow, right? We're all in the same flow. It's the same thing when you think of someone so strongly and then they call you like 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later and say, I was just thinking of you. What's going on, So I think a lot of these signals are coming. A lot of these energies are shifting. The frequencies are shifting. To me, this is all a part of that. And I think, we have to pay attention to get the signals, to get the guidance, instead of trying to intellectualize this, instead of trying to figure out intellectually a situation or a circumstance. It's not going to happen that way. This is about frequency. This is about sensory perceptions, not about intellectualizing this. So you have to sort of like put those old habits away. So I thought this was interesting enough to be worth mentioning in case anybody else reading this also experiences it, the Morse code thing. But in the most important factor which can't be stressed enough, is the uncanny synchronistic timing of ear tones. They often happen during key moments in conjunction with a specific comment said by somebody, and that's true. Here's another thing she's pointing out. This is very true. She's saying these ear tones happen during key moments and in conjunction with a specific comment said by someone, or maybe a number sighting or a deja vu. Something specific happens and suddenly an ear tone appears. And this is so true. And I've learned to look at that particular experience is sort of like a validation. To me, I'm getting a signal from source or from guidance that says what is happening right now is on the mark. This is real. This is true. It's like when I said to you, when somebody does something or says something, let's say you're sharing something, and suddenly you both get chills all over your body, or the hair on your body stands up and you go, I'm getting chills. What is that? That means there's some signal here that what you're speaking about, this experience or sharing, you are receiving information of a high frequency, that this is a true thing, that this is a factual. This really happened. This is true. Like, oh, I'm getting chills, you know. So, it is this aspect of ear tones that really got my attention and proved to me that they weren't a natural, random, biological happening with some scientific explanation. And yes, I do. Colleen, I'm going to take a break and I will get back to this, so stick around. There's more coming. All right, I'll see you in 5 minutes. Thank you.
You're listening to Haggy Shack Radio at haggyshack.com. And we are back.
Okie dokie then. Thank you, Colleen.
You're welcome.
So, the most important factor is the uncanny synchronistic timing of ear tones. And I did read that, and I think I want to read it again because, yeah, again, when someone says something specific or there's a numbers citing or a realization, even a deja vu, okay, this will often be followed in a very split second by an ear tone coming in. What's interesting is that this ear tone right up has generated probably the most emails from people in the past 3.5 years out of all of my write-ups, not counting the write-ups having to do with movies. So apparently a lot of people have this phenomenon. Something about this subject really gets to people. Many people can relate to it and have an opinion on it, although nobody is in full agreement as to what it means and how it works. So what kind of peeves me, though, are those who don't fully read what I've noted in this write-up and then email me with a know-it-all tone, telling me with absolute authority what's going on in all cases of ear tones and so on and so forth. I documented what's going on in my own situation, as the reader will see with the logbook entries coming up, and I tried to come up with various theories based on what that logbook information was indicating. So it's always a bit irksome when people don't take that moment to read what I've written before taking or firing off the know-it-all emails. Well, you know, there are always those out there who are the know-it-alls who will, you know, negate or diss or have to be the know-it-alls. So, to me, I just say okay and whatever. I know my own truth. I know my own truth. I know the knower within me, okay? The discernment tool that I have and the knowing within me without a doubt what is factual for me, okay? And anybody can question that. They could say, how do you know? Or how do you know this is real or true? I've had people say that to me, and I just have to tell them, you know, I know because this is something that I have learned since childhood, what it feels like, the word feel, what it feels like when I receive the truth or a signal that is right on the money or factual. So that's the only way, you know, and it's not an intellectualizing thing. That's sure that person could say, well, I don't agree because I think it should be this way or I'm thinking that. Well, it's not about thinking. You're not in that flow of energy frequency that gives you the truth that you can connect with either this is false, this is true. It's an energy, as I said before. So when you question the universe about something and the response is, comes back to you that what you're asking is not factual, you will feel a different frequency. You will receive from source a different frequency because it's not factual. But if you respond, if you ask again out to source and they're going to reply to you, source is going to reply to you and say, that is true, that frequency you feel will be different. So there's the difference between a positive and a negative, or a yes or a no. And that's the only way I can describe it. So, and somebody could say, well, you're crazy. And that's, what can I do, right? I can't do anything. They want to have that opinion because they haven't experienced this, or they're not interested in even attempting to experience this. Okay? So, I've had sporadic ear tones throughout my life, but the issue became so prevalent during 2002 due to what I was involved with in my life that I created an entire section of my logbook devoted solely to documenting it. The logbook contained the following information: the date, the exact time that the ringing tone happened, which ear it occurred in, what the tone sounded like, whether it was high, low, strong, faint, short-lived, long-lived, or went on and on, a tuning fork, a hum, whatever, and whether there was any muting involved and physical after effects, and what exactly I was in that moment doing or saying, and what was I thinking about, and who was I talking to, and where was I. So she's kept a log book on these, and that's a really good idea. If you have phenomenon going on, you might want to, if it's a continuation of phenomenon, you might want to start keeping track, of dates, the experience, what it was, and so on. So through documenting this information, I was able to determine over enough time that these ear tones are definitely not random, nor the result of a natural biological problem with my ears, and most definitely did point to some external situation happening. I was also able to determine that there was a difference in meaning for right ear versus left ear for me. The left ear has been negative, usually indicating straight up monitoring or warning me that something is off about a person or a situation, while the right ear was positive, something seeming to confirm or reaffirm something that I'm thinking or reading. You see, she's experiencing the same thing I was talking about, that there's a confirmation here. When you hear this tone, pay attention to what you're doing. What were you just thinking about? Because if you were just thinking about something in your mind and that ringing comes in, and for her it's in her right ear, that's a confirmation about what she was thinking or even reading, or maybe what someone else is speaking about. In fact, I just came across a reference to ear tones in the book Masquerade Party at Secret Canyon. Oh, we'll have to look into that book. The book is one psychic woman's personal experiences into the realm of abductions, mind control, and MILAB, harassment. And on page 73, she says, on my way back to Ventura, I drove past Point Muga Naval Base. Stopping at the red traffic light, suddenly in my left ear I got a very loud ringing noise. Now to a psychic, that's a strong warning. That means something is very, very wrong. It's like a red alert. Ringing in the left ear is a warning, and a ringing in the right ear is positive. That's her perception. Okay? I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying it's wrong. This is what she has come to determine through her own experiences. Now, that was exciting to find someone else noting the same thing that I've experienced and who has independently come to the same conclusion as myself as to the meaning of left ear versus right. Now, this may be for all circumstances with people's ringing left ear, ringing in the right ear. I don't know, but this creates a conversation here with a lot of people. So, I have a net acquaintance also who noticed that for him, left is positive while right is negative. See, so there you go. Everybody will probably be different. The more you write about this or log this, the more you can determine for yourself what may be happening with you and what it does mean. It's all about logging your stuff. I can't stress it enough. Documenting things focuses your awareness. Yes. And in certain situations like this, you want to be able to focus. You want to have clarity. It's like dreams. I say to people, when they tell me their dreams, I say, have you written it down? Well, no, I didn't write it down. It's important to have a dream log if you are a dreamer. And the reason is because you keep, it's sort of like you put the dream in a place, and that's your log book or your dream book. It gives it a presence in that book. It also allows space in your dream experiences for more. If you're trying to hold on to dreams, and one dream comes and another dream comes and so on, it gets kind of muddled. You also forget certain parts of the dream, It gets harder and harder to remember the dreams. And also, if you write your dreams right away in the morning, automatically more of the dream that you may not have recalled right away will start to come through. Because as you're writing, this activates the dream message even more, and let's say things that you don't recall immediately will start to come through and will be present for you to write them down. So it's a good idea if you're a dreamer to keep a logbook. The other thing is make sure you date everything, the date and so on, so that you can reference back, you can reflect back on your dreams, because throughout, if there is a message, for instance, a significant guidance, message, information, your dreams will link. You may have had a dream like several months ago, and you have a dream like maybe tonight, and you happen to log your dream, write your dream. And if you look back, you might see that dream a couple of months ago actually relates to the dream you recently had. So there's a thread here that you want to be able to keep track of. That's why you keep a dream book or a dream log. So it's all about logging your stuff. I can't stress it enough. Documenting things focuses your awareness, and in doing so, you gain more power over your life. So following is a sample of some of the most interesting ear tone events taken from my logbooks over the past 3 years, so you can see what it's all about. If you don't already know, consider these my ear tone Hall of Fame moments. And afterwards, I'll get into the who's, how's, and why's behind it all. So, what interests me in particular from the above excerpts are anything that directly affects and alters the mental and physical state, such as the tuning fork phenomenon, the residual burned out fried feeling, and the ear tone noise disturbance designed to scramble my brain and interfere with my meditating. Now, I've never had the fried feeling with an ear tone. I've never had that. She has had that. Now, if anything proves that it isn't just a random, meaningless biological occurrence, then these instances would be that. Those times I've gotten gonged, as I call it, was a strange sensation, just the way the body reverberated. The dizziness and sounding as if it was coming from the air all around me. It was quite literally like there was an invisible being standing right next to me, creating the sensation, or at least orchestrating it from a neighboring realm, or from a parallel realm, I'm going to say. Now, if you can rule out tinnitus, and you've definitely noted a pattern and meaningful synchronistic timing of your ear ringing, then what's the source and what is the meaning of it all? Now, there are several possibilities. Monitoring and or implants. If you know for certain that you're an abductee, then it's practically given that you're going to have some form of implants going on, be it physical or etheric, for the purposes of tracking monitoring and physical behavioral modification. According to the research, many times the physical implants are located deep within your ears, the base of the skull or cerebellum area, or embedded up in the nose. And etheric implants and techno-gadgetry can occur anywhere on the body, it seems. So with that in mind, it makes sense why so many of these ear tones occur for abductees when having unusual thoughts about the weird stuff, for instance, and talking to certain people or during key times and dates. Now, I know that I'm an abductee, and I also know that one of my younger sons was abducted. Yeah. So, for example, during one particular 24-hour period between December 1 and 2, 2007, I experienced 3 ear tones, which is very unusual for me. That for me means something is up on the personal front. And by December 3rd and 4th, I was involved in a hiccup misunderstanding between myself and a male abductee that my boyfriend and I have known since about 2005, which had the potential to result in a permanent parting of the ways on negative terms with burnt bridges. In other words, timeline split. The guy in question runs several websites about UFO abduction alien researchers, as well as promoting my website on his various websites, which gives me a lot of traffic and is much appreciated. And he also happens to be the target of some heavy-duty harassment, and it's not the first time that I've gotten ear tones revolving around him. Very interesting, to say the least. But this is why logging my ear tone occurrences was vital. Only after the fact could I look back and see what happened around the time that I got them. In this instance, it seemed quite clear why the sudden monitoring going on within a day of our weird misunderstanding and near parting of the ways. Okay. The body's own self-generated mechanism of alert. Okay, this is another possible. Again, it is pertaining to abductees. Another explanation that I've encountered is that the outside monitoring itself is silent and does not create an audible noise, but rather the ear tones are the body's own self-generated mechanism for alerting you that you're being monitored and interfered with. In that case, right ear versus left ear could actually be the body's own self-designated code to distinguish the different sources and intent behind the monitoring. So, the ear tones, which have left my ears feeling hot and fried out, and the tuning fork hum gongs, which cause disorientation and dizziness, could be a result from a physical implant or even something in a neighboring realm that is affecting me, while the more benign, painless tones could be my body's own self-generated warning system. And here's another possible. Heads-up warning. So recently a reader from India emailed me to report that for her, she says, I found that there is a large natural calamity like a tsunami, a flood, or an earthquake about 2 to 3 days after I hear a tone in my ear. So I thought that was interesting and worth mentioning. Also noted in her email, she doesn't have the abduction thing going on the way I do because she's in India. Now I don't understand this, why she's saying this. That doesn't make sense to me because people are abducted all over the world, but okay. So the whole My Labs and alien abduction phenomenon seems to be running rampant in America from what I've learned. Probably because the shadow government sold out the American public decades ago in exchange for technology and power. Yes, and that was when the Greys, well, there were 2 things that happened. I talked about this maybe a year ago. The people of the blue feather, okay, the ETs called the people of the blue feather that the Hopi are familiar with, came to, I think it was Eisenhower, and said that they would help the United States, help the government with technology if they would disband their nuclear weaponry. Well, we know that that did not happen. So the Greys came in and said, well, we'll help you with technology, and so you can become more powerful if you agree that we can abduct some of your human people. Okay, so that's what she's referring to. So that was a trade-off. And because, it's interesting because you wonder, wow, all this technology was just like this, like an explosion, right, of technology around that time suddenly. And a lot of the technology that they were given, by the way, they've had for a lot longer than they are telling us, and then they'll come out with something but they've had it, for longer than they are, sharing. So there's an article over at Terra Research, Terra Research, talking about this very subject. Natural disasters such as earthquakes and volcanic eruptions emit scalar waves that can be detected by animals and sensitive people, which in turn can set off ear tones, apparently, as well as migraines and other physical problems in sensitive people. And my friend, who lives in Southwest now, she's one of those people who would get a severe migraine and then a couple of days later an earthquake would occur. And I have another friend who writes me quite, intermittently about she's getting this. She gets, how does she describe it? It's sort of like her whole body goes into a tingling or high level of energy, and always after this happens, there's an earthquake. So yeah, we are sensitive people. We are also psychic people. And a lot of us ignore the messages that we get. Or we just get bothered by them. Oh my God, I have a headache. Let me take pills. But she has happened to be very tuned in and said, why am I getting these headaches? And then she'll read in the paper a couple of days later, because there was an earthquake. She put two and two together. So it also the same reason why strange cloud formations have been known to form over regions just prior to earthquakes and such. I recently heard from a reader who noticed a correlation between ear tones and partial facial paralysis along with premonition dreams, tying into some natural disaster or big issue happening about 3 days afterwards. Now she said, listen to this now. Okay, here she says 3 days after, and I think she just said up above, same thing, 3 days after. So that's an interesting thing to note. Okay. A near identical situation as the woman who wrote me from India, which is why she was prompted to write me. In fact, so that's something important to keep in mind and give credence to the scalar wave theory. However, the person who emailed me also noted that she'd gotten the tones and dreams just prior to 9/11. Which is obviously a man-made problem, not a natural disaster. Yeah, interesting, right? Yeah, there were a lot of people who had dreams before 9/11, who had premonition, dreams, waking premonitions. I had my own experience. I talked about it the other day. It was a foreboding, which is an energy. It's a very heavy energy, but it feels like a weight, a foreboding. It's the only word I can kind of give you, that it's like the feeling of foreboding, meaning something is going to happen, and it's not a good frequency. It's a low frequency, heavy frequency. And I had felt that prior to 9/11. So what is going on? So, I think it's energetics, it's frequencies, it's signals, so let's say in this case, it was not a natural disaster, but a man-made disaster. Let's just look at this let's just open this up and look at this. What is the possibility here? If we are all energy and frequency, if we're thinking of, bombing someplace, let's say there's a group of people, in this case there was a whole plan. They were thinking of doing something horrific, right? They had this plan going on for, I don't know how long they were planning this. But they were in process and the plan, and it was getting closer and closer and closer to the day. Now you're thinking of their energy. Imagine their energy, the level of energy that they are at with this dark plan. What a power that dark plan energetically is. And it's not just one person, it's several people. that are involved in this, which is accelerating this dark frequency of their plan. So those of us, and many of us are sensitives, and we would be experiencing or picking up on these energies. And we do. We pick up a feeling or a sense, a sensation, and that's why our discernment tool is very important to pay attention to. You know, what is this? What am I feeling? A lot of times people say to me, I don't know what's going on. I have this feeling, you know. So it's sort of like now you have to investigate the feeling. Does it feel balanced? Does it feel imbalanced? What does it feel like, you know? And a lot of people will say, oh, I'm just getting this feeling. So I say, is it yours, about you? Is it about something else or someone else? And there you have to start exploring energetically, receiving guidance from source. You're asking the question, is this about me or is it about someone else? And who may it be about? So I'm just saying that it's possible that 9/11 or any situation, there's a lot of reports of disasters, not just, you know, natural, but man-made, that people afterwards say, I had a feeling or I had a dream. This is really phenomenon that is very real, because we're talking about frequencies. We're talking about thought. A thought has a frequency, either positive or negative. And when something is positive, it's a lighter, more harmonious frequency. When something is negative, it's a heavier, darker sensation or frequency. So there's two different things going on here. So it means there is more to the story, and not just one simple explanation for all situations across the board. So continuing away from the idea of abduction-related happenings, we're going to go to angel happenings and ascension. Sorry, I had to cough. I'm just taking some water here. So angel happenings, ascension tones, and more. So this one needs to be addressed, as it's something you'll see mentioned elsewhere on the net. But many people have a New Age spirituality take on the subject of ear tones, believing the sources are solely angels, higher positive beings, and so forth, or that the tones are exclusively associated with the process of ascension. Now, I can't personally say what the deal is for everybody else. Excuse me. Sorry, I have to cough. Clicking off here a little bit. Sorry about that. So she says she can't personally say what the deal is for everybody else. I can't even verify whether ascension is really real. I just know that in my own case, there definitely seems to be dark undertones, no pun intended, going on with the tones sometimes. And this is evidenced by several of the above logbook entries. However, I am open to the idea that the more positively associated tones may very well originate from higher positive beings. Who knows? Anything is possible. But on the other hand, I also feel that many aspects of the New Age movement are misinformation and may be leading people astray, specifically pushing only fluffy feel-good concepts with no support whatsoever backing up their various claims and their points of view, and purposefully steering people away from anything that might be considered concerning, or she says negative, but which actually may be the truth of what is happening. So you have all these New Agers believing only one super positive, fluffy explanation for various phenomenon. And in this case, hearing the tones means you're tuning into ascension. and the angels and ascended masters are guiding you. Sure, maybe sometimes for some people, but that's definitely not all that's going on here in every case. And I'm sorry to burst any bubbles, but sometimes these tones do seem to indicate monitoring and interference, or as noted in the previous bullet point, reacting to scalar waves. Which is why, once again, it's so important to log your stuff down and look for patterns and the bigger picture. Now, don't just take some fluffy feel-good New Age source tell you how it is. To tell you how it is, determine for yourself what's going on in your own situation, and I totally agree with that. We must learn to find the truth ourselves. It's okay to look at other opinions and viewpoints and other information, but ultimately we do need to use our own discernment tool, because a message for one person is not the same for all. Your messages or your experience may be completely unique for you. So, now related to this is how I've had several people email me over the past 2 years trying to refer me on to the work of the Higher Balance Institute. And I don't know what that is, but who claim that there's a universal background tone, all right, of sorts that one can tune into. So if you're thinking of being yet another person who emails me with a Higher Balance Institute recommendation and invite, don't. I'm not interested. Okay. I have no input either way on the idea of a universal background tone. That's for the reader to decide for themselves based on their own experiences. However, what I do know is that my own situation is not a match for what the higher universal background tone is describing. It's a totally different situation, as clearly evidenced by any of the logbook entries noted above. Problem is, the message I was getting in at least one of these recommendation emails was that there is only one explanation for these tones, and that's their explanation. You see, that's where you really have to be smart. If someone is claiming an organization or a person, I don't care who it is, if they are making claim that they have the answer for you and that they know it all, I think you have to step back a little bit, because it is important. We're here to learn and grow and to develop our gifts, which are, including these, the awareness and enlightenment and the psychic gifts that we've been given. Not to let someone else tell us what our experience is. So, she says there's definitely more to the puzzle here than just that one limited explanation, and I agree with her. So, and if I've proven in my own case that there's more going on here, then it means the same would go for others. And I want to point out also about dreams, for instance. When people have a dream, well, now all you do is you pick up the book on dreams. And so wrote the book, they have a book on dreams. So you go to the page that talks about your dream. I had a water dream, I had a dream about a dog, I had a dream about a ladder, whatever it is. The book will tell you what the dream represents, but it really doesn't tell you what your dream meant regarding you. You are unique in this world, and the dream that came to you is unique information. So really, you cannot really find your answer in a dream book. The same thing with people, let's say, well, an eagle flew over me the other day. Let me go to the animal book. Somebody wrote a book that says if you see an eagle, it means this, and it means that. And that is not true. Because in our way, in the First Nations way, what we do, if an eagle flies over us, okay, I would suggest, well, sit down right away. First, make an offering of gratitude. Thank you to that spirit. The spirit who sent that eagle. Eagle is a messenger, for sure, but eagle, is how we communicate on a higher level. It's one of the most powerful and sacred. All animals are, but eagle definitely signifies something in a traditional way, but you still need to find out what is Eagle telling you, what is the message. And the only way to find that is for you to communicate, to open up, to sit quietly, and to seek that guidance from that spirit of the eagle. That you will not find in a book. You'll find generalizations, for sure, and maybe you'd be satisfied with them. But if you really, really want to know, that's your work. That's your spiritual journey work. So, she says, in her own situation, she has learned how to utilize her ear tones as a heads-up warning system. When they occur in the middle of the night, that's not a good sign, because abductions, for me, are a middle of the night, early morning occurrence. And so when I've gotten an ear tone at 3 a.m., it usually meant somebody was looking for me. Ear tones for me are many times accompanied by other phenomena throughout the day, such as syncs, synchronicities, number sightings, and so forth. And taken together indicates that something is up, and that's why it's so important to really pay attention to these things and keep a log of your phenomenon, to pool everything together to see the big picture. Now, it's to discover what it all means. You have to start somewhere, and that's why you log your phenomena, one entry at a time. Later, you can go back over it and you could see what was happening on what particular days. And then you don't want to force square pegs into round holes. You don't want to try to make your personal situation conform with preconceived ideas. Whether it's abductions, monitoring, ascension, angels, predictions of natural disasters, or universal background tones, and so forth, just write your phenomena down and step back and let the information itself do the talking, because it will. Now, when sleuthing out the patterns, look at everything that you can possibly look at. Pay attention, particular attention, to the days of the week, the number of the day of the month, the times when things happened, everything. Note everything. Maybe there's a pattern to when this stuff is happening to you. There's almost always a pattern, and numbers are the best place to start, dates and times. Through documenting my various anomalous physical phenomenon, I soon learned that my pattern involved the 1st, 3rd of the month, and the 20th and the 23rd for abductions. On a closing note, something that can't be stressed enough here is the need to not get caught up in crazy paranoia regarding any of this and other unusual phenomena. Try your best to view it with an alert, attentive, but yet detached neutrality. And the words here, detached neutrality, would be words that Don Juan speaks about the spiritual warrior or the shaman's way, just like she's saying. Be alert, be attentive, but with detached neutrality. When you start wigging out about things, your frequency plummets and you become an easy target. Yeah. Stuff loves nothing more than somebody who's freaked out, that's for sure, who's paranoid or angry about the things that are happening to them. Taking violent swings at empty air in the dark, or not good. If you're being monitored, there's probably not much you can do about it, unless you've figured out a way to put up blocks and stop it. Otherwise, try to view your ear ringings as a tool, a heads-up adventure, a game. If nothing else, at least they make life interesting and prove to you that there's a whole lot more to this reality than the mainstream world would have you believe. They help keep you awake and on your toes, paying closer attention to your life than you would have otherwise, which is always a good thing. So try to maintain a positive, balanced perspective on it all. And that is the way of a spiritual warrior. Exactly. Now, I only have like 20 minutes here or something. I'm going to continue with this. This goes there's a lot here. And I didn't realize I guess I'm not going to get to Don Juan, the Fire from Within today, but I hope you're enjoying this. I think this is very significant and important information too. Now we're going to go into déjà vu. Okay. A déjà vu, as most probably know, she's going to describe this now as a strange physical sensation that you are experiencing something that you've already done before. Not just that you've done something similar, but that you're actually repeating yourself in the same exact way. The sensation usually appears out of nowhere, like there is no warning for this, that's for sure, and lasts for several seconds or longer and then fades out again. And that's so true. I've had numerous déjà vus in my life. Comes out of nowhere, and everyone who's involved with it, mostly I think I'm trying to remember, mostly my experiences involve other people. So I'm not alone in this experience, but everyone is in exact position. Everyone may be in conversation. Everyone's in exact position. Whatever is going on, I'm in the identical place. It's all like, yes, this is the place I have been. Let's see what she says about it. I have my own perspective about this, but let's see what she says. Okay. Thanks to the 1999 movie The Matrix, many people now jokingly or even seriously think of déjà vu as something being changed in the program of reality. Mainstream science would have us believe that déjà vu are nothing more than a meaningless and explainable biological phenomenon centered in the brain with no known reason for why or how they happen. And of course, they are the authorities. They know. They tell us what it is or what it isn't, and that's it. That's it. And at one point in my life, I would have accepted the scientific explanation and dismissed the idea of déjà vu having some special woo-woo meaning behind them, but not anymore. Rather than write out an explanation of why I no longer accept the mainstream scientific explanation, I'll just let my logbook do the talking. And I also want to mention that mainstream scientific authoritarian explanation, mansplain, I'm just going to throw that in there, about near-death experience. It's the same thing. It's something to do with the phenomenon centered in the brain, sparks or synapses and blah, blah, blah. Well, I've had my own near-death experience. I know our Dolly has described and shared her near-death experiences. I know other people. If you want to go further with this, read Dr. Raymond Moody's book. I think it's Life After Death, where thousands and thousands and thousands of people all over the world have had the same, pretty much identical experience. So, yes, it's not a brain synapses and all that stuff. It is often, I would say, a great percentage of people's lives are changed dramatically for the better in such extraordinary ways. So, here she is, March 2002. She was working at a restaurant as a waitress in Florida. She was in the kitchen in the middle of the dinner rush. She was making a salad at the salad bar. Suddenly, I knew that I was going to have a déjà vu. I even paused what I was doing and waited for it, like, okay, where is it? Come on. There we go. It came. And when it hit, it really hit. It was the strongest, most crazy déjà vu I've ever had. Ever. It was just insane. Plus the fact that I had a premonition about it beforehand was even amazing. That had never happened before. Now, she's going to share her déjà vu experiences. And before I get into them more, I'm going to share with you What I have come to understand about deja vu, and this is again my perspective and my experience and message or guidance that I had received about deja vu. So, I feel and have come to understand, okay, when you have a deja vu, you are actually experiencing something that has happened before. But how did that happen before? Well, it means that you actually had at one point traveled in the future, and you're taking part in this parallel experience in the future, your life, and so on, and that you experience particular things, situations, circumstances, and it's sort of like again, an energy or an imprint in the mind or a frequency of memory. It could be in the ethers. It could be imprinted within us. And then in this timeline here, we're moving toward that. As we're moving in our life, we're moving toward that, and we come upon that very moment that is the deja vu that slams us or hits us or just drops us into this experience of this happened before. So it happened before, but it actually happened, in the future. And you're just now moving up incrementally in your life towards that moment. And these deja vus, they're sort of like nothing like, let's say, message. There's no like big message here. It's just the deja vu that is the message. It's like that experience is pretty stunning. But there's no like aha moment about, oh, I'm getting a message now about, life or all the answers from whatever. So it just tells me this is just some connectedness here to something that did happen, and we're moving towards that moment in time in this life that happened in that parallel experience or that other life in the future, if you want to say. That's how I feel. To me, makes sense. It kind of makes sense. So here's another one that she had. This was also in 2002 in November. Tom, Rob, Mike, and I were all hanging out and found ourselves at the Coral Ridge Mall. This is again in Florida. We were talking about getting something to eat. Mike had suggested Denny's earlier, and I remembered that I had all these coupons for Denny's, courtesy of Ryan at work. Ryan had given them to me 2 weeks earlier, and I'd been holding on to them. These were really good coupons, too, for free meals and half the ticket and so on. Pretty tempting. We started considering going back to my apartment to get the coupons when suddenly Tom had a major, major deja vu, probably his strongest ever. It went above and beyond any normal deja vu because not only did he have the feeling that we'd been here before, having that same conversation, but he actually saw everything that came after. Yeah, now that's very unusual, which technically had yet to even happen. Now that is unusual. He actually saw us driving back to my apartment in the car, sitting at red lights in traffic, getting the coupons, and pausing to hang out a bit, and playing with the cat, and talking. Now, I've never heard of that. Where the deja vu memory continues. I've never heard it myself either. This is new to me. And you have the entire memory of what has yet to occur. So starting off as a deja vu, then turning into a premonition, basically. Well, she's calling it premonition. I'm going to say that it's just a continuation of the memory experience where you were in that timeline. That's how I look at it. Well, because of that, I became suspicious, and I said, you know what, let's forget Denny's. Why don't we? Besides, I don't feel like driving all the way back home just to get some coupons. When we can just go to IHOP instead, which is right down the road. IHOP has better food anyway. So, and factor in the weird lightning storm that was going on outside out of nowhere on the same day that all four of us just so happened to come together to hang out in the same place, and the entire thing is majorly suspicious. So you know what? Forget it. We're not going to Denny's. And we decided, and we didn't. Okay. So, I'm going to leave off there because it's getting close to time is up. And I hope you're enjoying this. And I will continue this next Friday. And I think this is very fascinating. And if you do have any questions, write them in the chat. And I'll do my best to respond to them, and hopefully I help you. So, okay, I'm going to sign out now, and I want to thank everybody for listening. Have a good week. And Pila Maya. Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you, Barb. Good night.
Good night.
Welcome to Haggie Reads For You on Wolf Spirit Radio.
Science systematically removed the uncertain and the esoteric from the world. Simulcast to Wolf Spirit Radio. And please remember that we are both totally listener-supported. So if you like what you hear, please be sure to hit the donate button on either HaggieShack.com or WolfSpiritRadio.com. And now, I'm going to pick up where I left off last week with the Celestine Prophecy. We had followed the meandering path from the bridge through a small meadow and into an area more densely covered with trees. With this attitude, she went on, science systematically removed the uncertain and the esoteric from the world. We concluded, following the thinking of Isaac Newton, that the universe always operated in a predictable manner, like an enormous machine, because for a long time that's all it could be proved to be. Events which happened simultaneously to other events, yet had no causal relationship, were said to occur only by chance. Then 2 investigations occurred which opened our eyes again to the mystery in the universe. Much has been written over the past several decades about the revolution in physics, but the changes really stem from 2 major findings, those of quantum mechanics and those of Albert Einstein. The whole of Einstein's life work was to show that what we perceive as hard matter is mostly empty space, with a pattern of energy running through it. This includes ourselves. And what quantum physics has shown is that when we look at these patterns of energy at smaller and smaller levels, startling results can be seen. Experiments have revealed that when you break apart small aspects of this energy, what we call elementary particles, and try to observe how they operate, the act of observation itself alters the results, as if these elementary particles are influenced by what the experimenter expects. This is true even if the particles must appear in places they couldn't possibly go. Given the laws of the universe as we know them, 2 places at the same moment, forward or backward in time, that sort of thing. She stopped to face me again. In other words, the basic stuff of the universe, at its core, is looking like a kind of pure energy that is malleable to human intention and expectation, in a way that defies our old mechanistic model of the universe, as though our expectation itself causes our energy to flow out into the world and affect other energy systems, which of course is exactly what the third insight would lead us to believe. She shook her head. Unfortunately, most scientists don't take this idea seriously. They would rather remain skeptical and wait to see if we can prove it. "Hey, Sarah, over here," a voice called faintly from a distance. To the right, about 50 yards through the trees, we could see someone waving. Sarah looked at me. "I need to go talk with those guys for a few minutes. I have a translation of the third insight with me, if you would like to pick out a spot and read some of it while I'm gone." "I sure would," I said. She pulled a folder from her pack, handed it to me, and walked away. I took the folder and looked around for a place to sit down. Here the forest floor was dense with small bushes and was slightly soggy, but to the east